Hi everyone. Thank you for watching another episode of Conversation. And today's topic is creativity and flexible thinking. And my guest for this topic is Kimberly Henry. Hi Kimberly.
Ah, hi.
Hi. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you for people as well, if they read the thing, you're a writer.
Yeah, I'm a
Right.
writer. I love writing poetry. That hasn't really been something that I've been doing though, because my creativity is elsewhere. Uh,
Mhm.
but poetry has always been an outlet for me. Like because I wasn't willing to do therapy for a long time in my life, poetry was my therapy. It was a way for me to have an outlet to express my thoughts, to express what was going on internally. And now, after 20 years of doing it, it's really like when I do it, it's more of I'm a messenger. It just comes out of me in minutes. Like I don't have to think about it. It's not conscious.
Yeah, poetry is actually a skill that it's amazing. It has kind of lost skill
Yeah,
nowadays, but it's so amazing. Like
yeah.
instead of writing the poetry, because you have to rhyme the things that you're saying.
Well, I don't do rhyming. That's the whole thing. Is I resisted the rhyming. I resisted anything that I was taught in school because I didn't like poetry taught in school. So
Okay,
now,
how do you do your poetry?
like literally, it'll be days of words going through my head. Sometimes I dream about words, and then I sit down with well, laptop. It used to be paper 20 years ago, but now it's the laptop. So I sit down and I just start typing whatever words were going through my head over the days, and it's just like a free form. And then at the end of it, I'm like, wow, did I really just like do that? Did I do that? Like, where did that come from?
Like the way I write as well, when I write, it's just like it channels through and it just comes. It almost feels like it's coming from somewhere, comes to your head,
Yeah.
comes to your fingers, and then you type it in, it's on a paper. Like you were just saying, like, where did it all came from?
Yeah, yeah. There's been many times where I'm just like, wow, okay.
Mhm. Yeah. So, but for today, let's talk about the creativity. Like,
Yeah.
how people actually to tell people how they can use creativity to start um, having more flexible thinking, because the reason why I want to have this topic is most people, they just think what they're taught to think because they
Mhm.
program and they were learning what to think.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they pretty much go through the life with the just knowledge of what to think, and they don't have creative thinking of like flexibility of thinking differently from what they were taught when they were raised or what they're hearing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, it's what we were just speaking about. It's awareness. So awareness of creativity in whatever form you choose creativity. There's so many different ways of being creative. There's not like one distinct way, one that fits one better than others. So having that awareness of you have this choice that you can choose creativity. And then it even brings a deeper awareness of what is going on internally that you get to express yourself through that creativity. But it takes a presence and an awareness to be able to be at that point. When I first started writing poetry 20 years ago and I was going through domestic violence with my daughter's father, I wasn't present. And so I was just writing words of how angry I was, how sad I was, how rejected I felt. Like it was all of these emotions and feelings, which is fine. It got me through that time of having an outlet that I could express. Like I always joke around that I knew I could write about killing him and I wouldn't get arrested because it was just putting words on paper of how I felt. So like literally the poetry was just a way that I could be with what was going on internally. Now, over the years, 20 years, there's a presence and there's an awareness that I have when I'm with words. It's not just expressing the emotions and the feelings on a surface level, if that makes sense. It goes
Mm-hmm.
deeper than surface. So I feel
Mm-hmm.
like the awareness and the presence is so important, because if we want a higher consciousness as human beings, it's going to take like presence and awareness to be able to help each other have that higher consciousness and not live on the way that you were just saying, like an automatic autopilot. Like I did that for years. It was literally surviving. I didn't know how I was surviving second to second some years. And I was just on autopilot, and it served its purpose. However, we can all help each other with having a higher consciousness, that we don't get to live on autopilot and be so unaware and so not present to each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's where the thinking part is so important, because most people, they're not aware of, like you were saying, like aware of their thoughts.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like one thing, even like they don't understand their thoughts. They just assume that everything that comes to their mind, that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it can be something really random, that it's just like something that they heard in a store, something they heard on a TV, something their mother or spouse said,
Mm,
and they hear it in their head and they think it's their own thought.
right. And not only that, but to know that we're not our thoughts and we're not our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
We can
And
have a
also,
thought. It doesn't mean that we have to act on that thought.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and also understand that not all the thoughts are true.
Exactly.
That's really important to understand that. Like for me, it was really understand important to understand what I didn't remember where I read it first, but to understand that not everything that I'm thinking is true.
Exactly.
And then
Yeah.
I started like, whenever the thought came to my mind, I was like, do I really believe it?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, no, that's not aligned with my values. That's probably something that somebody else said or
Mm-hmm.
I heard from TV or something. So I regarded it like, this is not me. This is somebody else's thought.
Exactly. Yeah, especially because there's so many of us that are raised with certain beliefs by our parents, by our grandparents. And so
By
as little
culture.
kids, we don't know the distinction of we have our beliefs, because we don't really have our beliefs yet at that point when we're little. We're taking everybody else's, what they believe, and all of the things that they grew up with. And there are still things that I'm working through with what I was around with my parents, that they were raised with, that I choose not to have anything to do with. I don't believe in it, and that's okay. And now, as an adult, I can choose that. It's like what you're saying, though. Like, is this something that somebody else like impressioned upon me? Or is this something that I really believe in? Is it really true for me, or is it not? And if it's not, then I can choose something else.
Mm-hmm. It was same to me as well.
Yeah.
Same
Yeah.
way with the like I'm still processing. I think like it's gonna be like all lifetime. You have to maybe not even in one point you get to the point when you don't have to process it, but you just have to understand that one
Yeah.
is you, one voice is you, and other voice is something that somebody else said.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Definitely. Mm.
how do you use creativity on your daily life?
Well, it doesn't look like as much as what it did before. Before it was poetry, and before it was different kind of writing other than poetry. And so now it really, I choose to really be as present as possible, because I have days where I'm just all over the place. My energy can be everywhere. So some days are much harder for me to be aware and present. And it's like, I really, I don't know if it's going to sound like woo woo or whatever, but I really like on those days it's really challenging. It's really choosing to just be aware of what's happening. Like, oh, okay, my mind is racing. My mind is going through a thousand thoughts. And rather than trying to tell myself that that's wrong, that shouldn't be happening, or the thoughts are wrong, it's okay. Like, it's just not going to turn off today.
Mm-hmm.
So I continue to go about my day and be like witnessing what's happening. And then the next day is a new day. So I know what didn't work for me the day before was my mind going all over the place, 1,000 seconds and 1,000 thoughts going. And so I can have a new choice for the following day. So I believe that's like a different kind of creativity because it's using the mindfulness practices to be creative with how I'm choosing to be every day, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that is the flexible thinking.
Yeah.
That's why when you're saying that, I had the same kind of days, and you're
Yeah.
not the only one, and most likely probably all the viewers, they everybody has those days.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we like we only know our own thoughts and what else like what goes really on in our head and our thoughts, but we don't realize that other people's lives and everything is the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
So, which is only like if you look at a social media or something like this, or like TV, we see people, or even if we meet people, are the people that we know at work, or like we meet them somewhere, we
Mhm.
still don't know everything about them. You
No,
know, we don't
exactly.
know what was the day before or day after, like
Yeah,
when they going through, or just it doesn't even have to be that they're going through something. It is just something that they thought are maybe stuck in some problem, or
yeah,
like they just randomly, let's see if, I don't know how men are, but for the woman, sometimes the cycle kicks in, and you also like your thoughts or your emotions are based on your hormones.
exactly. And I feel like now that I'm in my mid 40s, now my body is changing so rapidly that I don't even know my body anymore. So that brings up a whole other different kind of circumstances and emotions and all these thoughts that go through my head because it I can have perceptions of stress because I don't know what my body is doing. And then I can have perceptions of worry and fear because I don't know what it's going to look like down the road because I don't understand what's happening today and like all of these things that occur all at the same time when if I just choose to be present, I know that I'm okay. My favorite saying is by the first woman author Julia Norwich, and what she says is all shall be well, all shall be well, all matter of things shall be well. Because how many times do we really tell ourselves that everything is going to be okay when we're feeling maybe the worst moment that we're sitting in?
Mm-hmm.
So that's like one of the ways that I use too is like I choose it's almost like a mantra to me because I love her saying that because as soon as I say it like 3 times and as soon as I say it the first time, I already feel a sense of peace over me. I
Mm-hmm.
already feel a sense of calm. So I can know that I can calm myself. I don't have to go to an external thing to make me feel better or look to somebody else to make me feel better. Because exactly what you're saying, what I'm realizing is you can be in relationships with people and you don't know what they're going through because not everybody talks about what thoughts they're having or what feelings they're having. So then I have perception that I'm doing something wrong, and then I get upset because that person's not doing something that I want them to do. When the reality is they're having a tough day, but they're not voicing that they're having a tough day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, like, if we would be actually saying to everybody what the thoughts that coming in our head, there would be craziness because, like we said, some of those thoughts are not our thoughts, and they're not like some crazy thoughts that we don't even know where they're coming from,
Exactly.
and they're not aligned with our values or anything, but they come in our heads. So
Yeah,
it's normal that we can filter those thoughts out and not to say them out,
exactly.
you know.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Exactly.
wonder
Like
if that's some kind of skill that would develop in like in a line of like humanity, when maybe when like tens of thousands of years ago we didn't have that skill, we just said like whatever came to our mind.
exactly. Or did whatever the thought was to do.
Exactly. So
Yeah, I
because
mean, something as silly as like I have a job now that I go to and I enjoy being there and it's a around wellness and people feeling better and stuff. And I bring certain snacks with me and I bring certain things with me. And I left one day recently and I was in the car driving on the highway and that thought came through. And the thought was, oh, I forgot this or I forgot that. And I wasn't going to be there again for a few days. So immediately that critical voice, because I have such a critical voice, the critical voice came through was like, oh, you're such an idiot. You're so stupid. Like, how could you leave those things? Now you're not going to be there for a couple of days. And then I drive and I get to where I'm going to put the car in park and they are there in my bag. So it was all BS. It was all lies. It wasn't true.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And that's the amazing thing with thinking.
Yeah.
That's the amazing part of thinking. Like the thought, like you were saying, that thought came in your mind, and especially with a lot of people, like, they have so many negative thoughts, either if it's from childhood or something that they went through, or somebody put those negative thoughts in their head
Yeah.
from somewhere they came. But to like learn to eliminate those negative thoughts and put the different positive thought or more positive thoughts in your
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
I've done that work a lot, and now most of my thoughts are all positive.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, something negative comes in, but I'm just I'm used to using the words "it's not true" and "cancel."
Yeah.
That's what I
Exactly.
use. So
Yes.
as I say that, and I say like, "That's not true. That's not my thought."
Exactly. Yeah. Or I just even thank it like, oh, well, thank you for giving me that thought, and you can move on. I don't need that thought, but thank
Mhm.
you.
Because we don't really like anybody who really like has that thought in their head, like saying like, I don't have anymore, but like that thought that comes to their mind, that a lot of people tell me that I have like, oh, I'm so stupid, or oh, like you said, like idiot. And
Yeah.
you don't really think about yourself like that.
No.
You don't
No.
believe that you actually are.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like the thought that comes in your head, because of like it's a normal automatic thought that the
Yeah,
people use, and like they like media, everybody, they use like when they say, oh, he's she they are idiots, but it's not. And that's a just automatic thought that comes your head, has nothing to do with reality.
exactly. Yeah, that's the big distinction is it's just an autopilot, automatic thing that's there. So once I realize that once I'm present and aware that it's an automatic autopilot thought, that's why sometimes I'll just say, "Oh, thank you. You came up again.
Hmm.
You
And
can move on."
that's when you can become creative and replace it with something else which is
Yeah,
better.
exactly.
And you feed your brain more of the positive thoughts, even through like you went through like such a hard times
Yeah,
and trauma, especially with the people who go through traumas in their life.
exactly.
They
Yeah,
need flexible thinking.
yeah, yeah,
Yes, they have to like, or they're going through the trauma now. They need flexible thinking to think about the situation differently than it was
yeah.
or is.
Yeah. And for me, what makes a difference is what's happening right now in this moment, not what's happening 5 minutes from now, not what's happening hours from now, not what's happening tomorrow. Definitely, it does not serve me to think about 30 days, a year, 10 years from now. That just gets me into a downward spiral that goes very quickly into something that does not serve me at all.
Hmm.
And it is a lot of it is automatic because of what I learned as a little kid. So, like, I tended to feel like I was responsible for everyone. So I was very critical on myself as a little kid because I felt like I couldn't fix them. So
Hmm.
I should have been one to be able to make it so that they wouldn't drink or that they wouldn't fight or that my mom wasn't having a tough time. And so I internalized all of it. And so it even takes me to be aware today in my 40s of how there are some situations in my life where I can still internalize it and it has nothing to do with me. I make it about me.
How
So
do you make it about you?
because I go back to that automatic thinking of, oh, it's my fault that this is happening, and it's my fault that this person is upset, and I should be able to fix them, and I should be able to make it so that they're happy. Where nobody gets to be fixed because nobody's broken. That's just an automatic thought from when I was a little kid.
Hmm. So, and how do you think about like now when you had to change the thought? What do you think instead? Instead of thinking,
Exactly what I was just saying. Like nobody's broken. I'm not broken. Nobody else is broken. So, it's flipping it so that it's not about me. It's not about what I can do for other people because I can't do anything for someone else. What can I do so that I love myself in this moment? Because what it really comes down to on a deeper level is when that automatic thinking comes up, the love for myself is out because I'm trying to more or less fill it for somebody else because I don't see what I can do for myself, if that makes sense.
hmm,
So
yeah.
then it's really flipping it so that, okay, what is something that fills me up that I can do right now so I am loving myself because it really had nothing to do with me, with what was occurring.
Hmm. And like the thought that like fixing others.
Yeah.
How do you have you? What do you think of instead of that?
Well, like I said, it really comes down to there is no fixing anyone. We're not broken. Nobody's broken. Even if you have a broken arm, a broken limb, you're not broken. You have a piece of your body part that is being healed. You're not broken. So
Okay.
it's really flipping the thinking so that it's, how can I put this? Like it's really flipping that thinking so that it's filling up my own cup, filling up my own self. Because if I can't fully love myself, even in those moments, I can't serve anyone else. I can't do anything for anyone else. So it's really taking a step back, like basically witnessing what's going on and then making a choice of what can I do right now that would make me happy so then I can serve someone else. But if I'm in that frame of thinking that I have to fix someone, I'm not serving them at all. I'm not doing anything for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of disabling them to actually take in charge of their own thing.
Yeah,
That they have to fix themselves as well, but maybe they just have to adjust what they're doing, how they're behaving, or what they're thinking. But you're not responsible for that.
exactly. I'm only responsible for me and my thoughts and my behaviors. And so that if it means that I step away and I go take a walk, because walking in nature always calms me, always makes me feel better, then that's what I do. If it's reading a book that I know that's going to calm me, or music tends to really calm me. It really makes me present. So then listening to a song, and then I can be a different way of being when I then am with other people. But I can't sit and reflect and be present about it if I'm in that automatic thinking of I did something wrong and I'm making it all about me, how wrong I am, how I should have done this. Once I should all over myself, forget it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I remember, like, actually remember, and it's kind of like silly story, but I remember when I first like was really, really aware of my thoughts, and it's really silly story because I was like, um, I was out, like I was just in a different city, and we were walking around, and my shoes, there was, I think maybe they broke or something happened with my shoes, and I had to buy different shoes, and there was not really options, a lot of options of shoes that I liked because
Yeah.
at evening time, we were walking around, and and they were. I think the shoes were more expensive than I wanted to buy,
Hmm.
and then for like an hour or something, that thought about like that those shoes were too expensive was just rotating in my brain. And
Mm-hmm.
I really started like paying attention to those, like my thinking and everything. It was because it was like, well, nothing I can do. And it's like, it doesn't matter. Okay. Like, let it go. Let that, like, I was
Exactly.
learning to let that thought go. I
Yeah.
remember that first time I was learning to let the thought go so well, because it took me a while. And because it was just automatic thought, it was just like on the replay.
Yeah.
Oh, when there's one thought and it just gets on a replay. I don't have it as much anymore, maybe every few times a year now, because I worked with it.
Yeah.
But back then, when I was younger, it was just like in a replay, just like playing over and over the same thought. And
Yeah.
when it happens, I'm just like, stop it. It's done with. It's in the past. It's done. Like,
Exactly.
what are we doing it about anymore, or nothing I can do about it in this situation? Just let it go. Either I will take care of it when it's time, or the world will take care of it, or it's just gonna go in the past.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And that's powerful to be in that kind of presence to sit with it like that and then choose that.
Yeah, but it took years of training.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I still have days where I all of a sudden am aware that it's on a constant replay and that's draining.
Mm-hmm. It
And then
is.
when
And
I'm
I
aware,
learned also one thing one trick when it gets on a replay is talk it out with somebody else, or call somebody if you have
yeah,
somebody trustworthy to call, and tell it like out loud, because then somehow it gets out of your head, and then it doesn't get replayed in your head anymore.
yeah, yeah,
Like if I
yeah,
get
that's really
something
powerful.
on my own,
Yeah, that's really powerful.
it's probably you same thing that you're doing with your poetry.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Because when it does come, it's it's a whole different perspective on what it looks like when it comes out on paper. Because it is about what's happening. Yeah, it's in a different perspective of the way that it's written. So it's because it's healing. It's not that repetitive play that is more or less like beating me up because it's on repetitive. Because when I hear it repetitive playing, I automatically go into the like I can fall into the victim. I'm a victim because I'm hearing it over and over and over again. Whereas when it's written in poetry form, it's put in such a way that if you read it, you could relate to it in your own way because it's not necessarily just about me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it does allow me to be able to get it out, to express myself, to allow it to be without making anything up about it. And even, I mean, just the other day, I'm going through something where that repetitive play was happening because I had something happen during the week that was stressful. And I've noticed as soon as I woke up one morning that repetitive play was going. And once I was aware of it, I'm like, oh, interesting. This is just going to play over and over and over again. So instead of making up things about that or things about what was replaying again, instead I flipped it around of noticing how am I responsible for what happened? Like, how can I take responsibility in some way for what occurred? Rather, so that I could flip it from being a victim to taking responsibility and ownership for myself. And so then it went from repetitive play to reflecting because now I made it to what can I learn from this? What lessons can I get from this? And so then flipping it that way really supported me because then I sat in reflection the rest of the time. I didn't sit into that victim. It's replaying. I'm like this, I'm that, whatever. So that really supported me in that way because I would rather sit and reflect about what can I learn from this and what can I do differently that if this ever happens again so that I am being responsible for myself but also I don't want to hurt other people. I don't get to hurt other people. Nobody gets to hurt me.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I can reflect. And then by reflecting, I can also share that with the other person. And so then by reflecting, it's vulnerable. And that vulnerability is what creates that trust and that authenticity. And that is something I never knew growing up because there was no authenticity in my house whatsoever with two alcoholic parents.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can't even imagine how that. So, if you remember the way you were thinking when you were a child, that was probably really different growing up like that from how you think now. Do you
Yeah.
remember any
That's
example
why that critical voice is so critical because I was very critical on myself. Because,
as
like
a
I
child?
said, yeah, as a little kid, I took it as I was responsible for everyone because I didn't understand alcoholism. I just looked at it as I internalized it that it was my fault that my dad would drink and get angry, and then my mom would drink, and then I would like see them like not hitting each other, but they would throw things at each other. I remember that distinctly as a little kid. So I internalized it that it was my fault and that I should be able to do something so that he's not drinking, she's not drinking, and that they can get along. And there were days where they did get along. However, what I got fixated on was when it was bad and how I was bad for being bad.
So you were. Do you remember what age was it approximately?
Oh, it was young, 5 or 6 years old.
Already 5 or 6 year old, and
Yeah.
you were thinking that like the alcoholism. I'm just trying to like think of like what would child, how would child put the words in, and like thinking that like it's because of me. So it's
Yeah.
because of like something that you did, or just you didn't even know why it was because of you in your mind.
No, no, I just thought that I could do something differently to make it better, but nothing could ever fix it.
Yeah,
Nothing could
it
ever make it
wasn't
better.
because of you.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't. It had nothing to do with you.
Yeah. I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
How old were you when you figured out that it was not about you? Could have been like really.
When I got into high school, their alcoholism was really at the worst. They had been drinking way more than they drank when I was growing up. And I flipped it so that when my dad was drinking more and he was angry more, rather than, well, there were times where I did, like, I got in his face and I would fight with him and stuff like that. But then what occurred to me is just allowing a space with him that I would ask him questions and then he would reflect and he'd always go back to his 9-year-old self when his father died and his brother was in prison and his other brother was in like a juvenile place that had for troubled kids. His sisters were married with their families, and so he felt incredibly lonely. And he would start crying as that 9-year-old boy. And I did this over and over and over again with him when he was really drunk. And I did it because as a teenager, I wanted to see a different side of my dad other than being drunk and angry. However, what I didn't realize what I was doing was creating that space for him to grieve because he never got to be a kid. He never got to be a boy and he never got to grieve his father's death. So it allowed me to have compassion for him because I could see now as a teenager that this is really what was in the space. He wasn't drinking because I was doing something wrong or I couldn't say the right thing. He was drinking because he had his own suffering going on that he didn't know how to cope with it. And the alcohol was the only way that he learned how to cope with it.
Hmm, that's true. I never like that. That's interesting as well.
Yeah,
That's why it's interesting to listen to other people's stories and everything because, like we say, like we think it's like only us, but there's like so many people that are like growing up in a who grew up in the same situation or they had to deal with the same situation and they actually had like similar thoughts, but they the same way. That feels in that moment feels like you're the only one.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, as a little kid, I felt like it was just me. And I had friends that had one alcoholic parent and they went through their own stuff with that. But I always felt different because I had two alcoholic parents. And I knew that something was always different about my home. I just couldn't never pinpoint what was different about my home. And so when I got into middle school, like around 13, 14, I went to a counselor and asked for help because I'm like, I just can't figure out what's different about my home. And then they helped me to get a counselor when I went through high school. And he's the only reason why I graduated high school. Because I knew, especially every Monday morning, I could go right to his office and he allowed me to scream into a pillow. I could throw things at the wall. He made me meditation tapes. Like he did his best to really help me to see
Yeah.
it. And there was still a part of me being a teenager that I resisted some of his help. So, like I said, there were times where I'd still get into my father's face because I was righteous and he was righteous. And I'm like, you're not going to tell me this and you're not going to treat me this way. And it didn't serve me to be that way, but it took me a long time to realize that.
Mhm.
But having that space that was safe and someone that I could trust is what made the difference for me to be able to graduate high school. Because
Mhm.
otherwise it felt like it was way too challenging to be in that kind of home where it felt like I didn't matter. If I didn't feel seen, I didn't feel heard. It was really challenging. And I knew that I was always different than my sister, and that made it even more challenging. So my mom was on her deathbed 10 years ago, and she's in hospice, and hospice tells people that it's your opportunity now to work it out. It's not about them, it's about you.
Okay.
So I had worked things out with my mom and I was her caretaker while she was going through cancer. So I really worked out a lot of stuff with her. And I looked at my sister and I said, you get to work this out with mom because I know you got stuff going on with mom. So you get to work it out. She looked at me and she said, you've always been the feeler and the talker of the family. I'm
Mhm.
like, really?
Yeah.
That's why I felt so different from everyone because I would attempt to hold them accountable. So it's it's pretty regular and common in alcoholic homes that something occurs and during the night and one day and then the next day nobody talks about it. It's like swept under the carpet. It's as if it never happened. And I hated that as a kid. I hated it because it was like, what? Like, how are you not going to take any responsibility for what happened last night? I was terrified and nobody wants to talk about it.
Mhm.
So I would drive them all crazy because I would attempt to hold them accountable. And that's what she meant, that I was the talker and the feeler, because I never got that nobody would want to talk about things.
Yeah, because that if you don't talk about it, you kind of like not fix again, but you're not changing anything. You know,
Exactly.
like the way I see as well. Like, okay, if something goes wrong like that, or like, okay, you did something wrong. The moment you realize that you did something wrong, you
Mhm.
should go and try to like change or apologize or like reflect on it. Like I'm trying not to use the word fix anymore, like because you were saying in the beginning, it's like there things are not broken, you don't have to fix it, but like have people to, like you said, take responsibility, um, understand and change
Right. Right.
possible things for like the future, and that's why as well, so you don't fall back in the same old patterns. You like where topic is creative thinking, where
Mhm.
you're trying to figure out how to do better or not to have that situation again.
Exactly.
Like, and like you're saying, if people like still like now, there's because it's still happening, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's happening nowadays, so many families, it's still happening. So if they don't reflect on it, it's going to keep on happening.
Yeah. And as a teenager, what he helped me to do was to write. And
Mm.
that's what really started helping me to let go of things that was happening because I would stop internalizing it because it did help to just get it out on paper. It was some of the most depressing stuff that I've ever written and I tossed it. I didn't want to keep it
Mhm.
because it was a very depressive time of my life going through all of what I experienced. However, by him giving me that space of having that tool to use to write, I was able to express it. So I didn't feel heard and seen by them, but I could help myself feel heard and seen when I put it on paper.
Yeah. I think that's what I like about the writing as well, like exactly like you said, because it gets out of your head, it gets out of your body.
Yeah,
It's not inside anymore as much as now it's in the paper, and like you said, you can toss it away if you want to.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And then there's even other different kind of creativity. Like I love Zumba because
Okay.
I can just move
Oh,
my body.
movement. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm that person where if it says in, I go out, and if it says out, I go in. So if in Zumba it says left, and the instructor says go left, I go right, and and the person says right, I go left. So I'm like that person. So Zumba fits me perfectly because I can do whatever I want to do, and nobody judges me. I can move my body.
I'm kind of like the same way. Like I can do somewhat like the trained dancing, but I'm like I can follow some of the steps when I really really pay attention.
Yeah.
But I'm so much better, and I do a lot of like just spontaneous dancing.
Hmm.
Like I when I just dance,
Yeah.
I'm really good with that. And I noticed like when I go into places where there's dancers, or like I worked with some people who are dancers, and I do my movement therapy. And people who are dancers, they know how to follow the steps and do their
Hmm.
routine dance. And if you tell them to just dance whatever you want to, they don't know what to do. They don't
Yeah.
have the creativity. Same way, like with the thinking, they
Yeah.
know how to follow the directions.
Yeah.
It's like you're thinking what you're taught to think, but
Yeah.
when they tell you just think random things or be creative or dance random and just like make up steps.
Hmm.
A lot of them are not able to just spontaneous dancing.
That's interesting.
Hmm. And that's when like it's interesting for people saying when people say like, "Oh, I don't know how to dance," because they're thinking they don't know the steps of the dance.
Exactly, because I get caught up into that myself. I want to know ahead of time what are the dance steps. I want to know if I can do it or I can't do it. And then I realize, oh, it just means I move my body and I
Hmm.
let go of trying to look perfect and wanting to look okay and not wanting to feel like an idiot. Like letting go of all of that, then it doesn't matter. You just move.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I teach like the spontaneous dancing. You just like let it go, and it's just like your body just do like and start with like random, really silly moods.
Yeah.
Silly
Yeah.
moves. Like I have like the and one part is actually to try to like come up the most silliest dance movement that you could like ever think of. Like make it as crazy as you can.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Just
I
freak.
love that.
Yeah, it's good that you brought it up. The movement is also that is also creativity.
It is. Big
Mhm.
time. And I feel like as women, moving our bodies is so important. I'm intentional every day that I stretch for at least 20 to 30 minutes. And it's just different yoga poses and different ways that I know relaxes my body. So I'm intentional about that. I'm also intentional about meditation every day. And I've let go of even what meditation means because I resisted it for years. So I can choose like what does it serve me today of what I need. It might mean like a 3 minute meditation. It may mean like a 22-minute guided meditation. I don't have to be so attached to what it looks like anymore because I can listen to what my body needs and what I need that day. Sometimes I need it multiple times a day because it depends on what I'm experiencing, what I'm going through. But I feel like as women, especially, like we can have those practices that support us and that helps us feel better. And that's different ways of movement and different ways of being creative.
Hmm. And same with the music as well. Like you're saying, like you have songs that you just put on a song, it also makes you feel in a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah. Songs are interesting because, like, one of the things of growing up with two alcoholic parents, I was in bars all the time. I spent a lot of time in bars
As
as
a
a kid.
child.
Yeah, as a kid, I was in bars all the time. So songs are very interesting because there are certain songs that can be played from the 1980s that trigger me to being back. And I can picture myself being an 8-year-old girl in a certain bar on a certain street playing that song on a jukebox.
Oh,
And I
wow.
can remember sitting at the table with the Shirley Temple, and there was these beer nuts that were peanuts,
Mm-hmm.
and the songs will put me right back into that place. It's taken me a lot of work on myself that when the songs play, I don't feel triggered to what I was feeling in that
Okay.
bar as that little girl. Now it's like, oh, it's this song. It brings me back to this memory. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
isn't that interesting? And then I can let it go. I don't have to be so attached to it and make up things about it because for years, sometimes it would put me in tears because it
Because
was
it brought
so
up the same
emotional.
emotion.
Yeah, it was so emotional because I felt incredibly lonely as a kid. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't sit at a bar with them until I turned like 17. And then, as weird as it sounds, that was a celebration for me that I was allowed to sit at the bar with them because I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have to sit at the table by myself.
Oh, okay. So you had to just wait in a table and just sit.
Yeah. Which is why I'm okay as a woman in her 40s being by myself. I'm perfectly fine being by myself, perfectly fine with being in silence. I enjoy silence. I
Mm-hmm.
look forward to silence. And I
Mm-hmm.
believe it's because of all of those experiences I had as a kid that I learned to be in tune with myself in some way. I wasn't completely connected to myself because of the trauma. I did connect from my body. So
Mm-hmm.
that's taken me like time now over the past 5 years to really connect to my body again because I didn't know what it was like to be connected to myself as a kid or even as a teenager. So it's really taken me a lot of time, a lot of practices to really learn how to be with myself and knowing that I'm okay and completely okay being by myself and being in silence. Like I don't get it when people say they don't like silence. I'm like, what do you? I'm like, it's so blissful to be in silence. How do you not like it?
Because maybe that's what you were saying. Like maybe because they it does make them uncomfortable or brings out like they were in, and also in silence you hear your thoughts.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. And I think that's what scares people is not realizing what we were saying in the beginning that you are not your thoughts. And then you can choose like, is this thought a fact or is this thought somebody else's thought, like you were saying? And I feel that people, when they really become silent and they hear those thoughts, they don't know what to do with the thoughts. I feel like that's where people get lost in that.
Mm-hmm. And that's when they need noise.
Yes. And noise is just a distraction
Mm-hmm.
in so many ways. It can be a distraction in relationships, it can be a distraction with yourself, it can be a distraction so that you just choose not to be present and you choose to be on autopilot. And a lot of people don't realize that autopilot is a choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like when you were like after your divorce and when you were going through a divorce, the same way. But some moments autopilot also takes care of you.
Yeah.
So I kind of like I with my autopilot, I know sometimes I'm a real, not always, but a lot of times I'm connected to my autopilot and I can tell it what to do.
Ah,
They take over. It's funny. You know what's the funniest thing? Because always make her do the dishes.
oh, I like the dishes. The dishes are very meditative.
Like sometimes I'm tired to do them. Like I'm already tired. I'm just like, I just want to go to the bed. I don't want
Yeah.
to do the dishes before going to sleep. And my like kind of like either I guess my like autopilot or something is like, well, I can still do them. I was just like, okay, go do them. And then it's just like I let myself be an autopilot and go do the dishes and go do all that. It's like, oh, that's amazing. It's like
It's so awesome.
like learned with the time, and like I think it was in the process of divorce
Hmm.
when I learned the autopilot to take care of the things that I was not like I had to take care of other things.
Yeah.
So the autopilot, I was like letting take care of the things that I was not able to focus on that moment.
That makes sense. Yeah, I like that. I like that you shared that. I'm learning that
Mm-hmm.
because I can easily go, especially at night, and I just want to go to bed. You know, there are nights where I don't wash my face and I don't wash the dishes, and it's just I make excuses and I rationalize it why it's okay just go to bed. And
Mm-hmm.
then there are the nights where I just like you said, like just go do them. Just go wash your face. Just go wash the dishes. And I go to bed feeling so much better because I did those things.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that you say that because it really does sometimes take like
Mm-hmm.
effort to talk the autopilot into doing the things that you don't want to do.
Yeah, and that is the skill that I learned like later on, like after I realized that I was like the autopilot was taking care of me when I like unconsciously. But
Yeah.
then when I realized that, I started getting more in contact with my autopilot and like was able to tell her or like the thing like my body to do the things by itself.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know I was
Yeah.
able to like, or if there's like some kind of situation with this important phone call or something like something new or something like this, that's just like same way, and I hear my autopilot say like, you just relax, I'll take care of it. And
Mhm.
I'm just like, okay, and I just let it take over, and it
Yeah.
just does all those things. I was like, oh my god, how did it all get done, you know finding the right thing is like I'm trying to find something, and it's like, okay, you go find it. It just
Yeah.
finds it. It was like,
That's awesome. So
yeah,
can I ask you a question? Because I'm curious.
yeah.
For creativity and flexible thinking, how does having this podcast support you with that?
What? Say it again.
Because you have this podcast, how
Hmm.
does this podcast help you with being creative and have flexible thinking?
Or the same way, because I have to like when I'm doing it, I'm like doing it live and everything, and I learn not to prepare.
Hmm.
But I
Yeah.
just have to be flexible of like listening, processing what I'm listening, and
Yeah.
then coming back with something creative, or just like the process goes faster.
Yeah.
With the
Yeah.
podcasting, like I have to like I'm listening to other person,
Yeah.
and processing has to be creative and fast.
Yeah. I love that.
Like it a few times like it's like it started with me being po- guest in a podcast show,
Yeah.
and I learned the way she did it, and then I learned from there how to do it myself.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but I learned it from being a guest, and then I was just applying to myself on like different way, or like using the creativity and just creating something that came to my head
Hmm.
and putting on a screen.
Yeah. I ask because I'm really inspired to have my own podcast. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm learning like what we're talking about. I'm learning how I'm noticing a lot of fear coming up because it's overthinking. I don't know what to name it. I don't know what description to write. And if I don't know the description and I don't know the name, that I can't move on to a logo, that I can't move on to find guests. Like it's all these things that I'm noticing over the last week that it's like, wow, that's interesting that all of that came up because I'm inspired to what you just said. I'm inspired to create a community of people to learn about myself, of being with another person and supporting someone else that they get to use their voice and they get to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, for that one is the same way. When you do that first one, like the overthinking, I understand all that because I did like all the podcasters probably their first episode went the same way.
Yeah.
And they all talk about the first one. They're it doesn't have to, you have to let go of like thinking that the first one has to be the perfect one.
Right.
Probably like the third or the second one already gonna be like better, but a third and fourth year starts coming naturally. But the
uh,
first one you just have to get through.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
Like yes and everything, and if you stumble on something or like something, even I had one podcast in the past when the person's screen went off or something, and I had to be on a screen on myself. It's just like same way like the poetry, that things just you pause for a second and
Mhm.
just let the one maybe like say let the autopilot take over in that moment.
Exactly. And what we were saying before we started, you figure it out.
Yeah, you figure it out and it just comes out. But it's just like with the first one, uh, you just do it with no expectation of it being the perfect episode,
Right.
you
Okay.
know. So that's the thing.
Thank you for sharing that.
And like one thing as well, like when I was talking with other people who do podcasts and everything,
Mhm.
like you don't focus on like the views or the people. If one person is gonna be getting something out of watching that podcast, one person only, it already made an impact.
Right. Yeah.
Usually
Yeah.
it's more than one. It's like more and more, and with the years coming on, like it's gonna be more and more. But if it's one person, you already made a difference.
That was my thinking when I wrote my memoir because
Mm-hmm.
I had so much come up around writing my story. Like I wasn't significant enough because I'm not a celebrity and I don't have all these things. And then, and there's so many people that deal with domestic violence. There's so many people that are single moms, like all of these things that kept coming up. And then, like you just said, I broke it down to, well, if one person listens to my story and they feel a difference and they're inspired that they could live in such a way, because if I can do it, they can do it, then I've served my purpose. It's not about all the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I
We
appreciate you
also
sharing that.
we're getting closer to the end, but we got so fast into the conversations that we didn't really talk as much about like what you're doing. So let's take this time, little time about like your memoir and like the things that you're doing and what the people can contact you about, and what is it you can help with other people with.
Yeah, and I'd also, because I really am grateful to be here with you, I also have a free ebook for your listeners that if they go to my website, they can download 5 ways to restore from your personal trauma. And so this allows someone who may be still afraid to go into it, maybe like what I was saying, that all these obstacles of I don't feel significant enough, I don't feel good enough, it's like a worthiness issue. This is going to allow you to have some practices just to start with so that you can then begin to be with your story. Because I feel like there's so many of us, especially now with all of what's occurred in COVID-19, that we
Mhm.
do realize we all have stories to share with people. And the bigger thing is we all have lessons to share with people, because the lessons is what's going to inspire people to make changes. And then, like we were saying in the beginning, that we can help people raise their consciousness. We can help people to heal and to live healthier and be a certain way rather than what we've all only known as, that we were saying, on the autopilot. So we can make a difference in the world with all of those. I Once I wrote my story, I realized that wow, if I wrote mine, I can help other people write theirs. So now I'm on a mission to help entrepreneur leaders who are willing to begin the process with help, that they can go in and they can write their stories, or I can write it for them. And then I help people just get it out to the world. And it's not about the writing, even though, like we were saying, the writing helps you to really be with things that are going on in your life, like for that flexible thinking. What it really does come down to, it allows you to feel so much other things. So I have such compassion for where I come from. I now see the lineage of women who have been before me that have made me who I am today. And I have such gratitude to them because they went through a heck of a lot more in the world than even what I go through now. And that's why I am resilient. And that's why I am strong. And that's why I'm so stubborn. So it's allowing yourself to experience all of those things from the writing. The writing is a bonus. All of those other things that you experience or what really is going to make you become a different person. And that's really what it's about. It's who are you becoming in the process of writing your story. So my website is what's on the screen. And that may actually bring up a different Kimberly Henry, though, because
Oh,
now, yeah, I think the HTTPS semicolon / gets to be in there because there's so many other Kimberly Henrys in the world.
okay.
Yeah.
But then like when you go back into YouTube, put it in the comments in the below as well. I have
Okay.
other ones actually in the description. I have all the other websites as well.
Okay. All
So
right.
it'll
Yeah.
be there, but put the link with that what you said, the ebook. They can get it from that
From
other
the
website.
Yep.
Maybe
Yep.
put that link in the comments as well.
Okay. I can do that. Yeah.
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 So
Just because there's so many Kimberly Henrys out there. I had no idea there were so many Kimberly Henrys.
I had actually
Thank
one
you.
guest, and she said when she started out doing YouTubes and everything, her original name was some adult actress.
Oh, really?
So she had to change her original name now. And it's just like, because yeah, I couldn't go with that name because that came out like completely different Google.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. That's funny.
Change name like that. Okay, so we at the end of our show and went really quick. So it's good.
I appreciate you. Thank you. I really enjoyed this. Thank you for
But I always have two questions at the end.
Okay.
I have two questions. I have one question is what is happiness for you?
Happiness for
For
me
you.
is for me feeling fulfilled, for me feeling contentment within myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's realizing that I am joy. And so that's really what happiness is for me, is when I'm in that space of I am joy and I'm living from that space of I am joy. Because I love making people laugh. I love making people feel seen and heard. And to me, that's happiness.
Mm-hmm. And what are the maybe like simple things, like everyday things, like few things that make you happy, feel happy? Simple everyday things.
Oh, cup of hot tea.
Mm-hmm.
I love a cup of hot tea. I love a good book that puts me in a place of feeling relaxed and calm and that I can learn from. I love podcasts.
Oh,
So
that's
listening to different podcasts and what I can learn from other people and be inspired and be creative in that way. And the meditation has made a huge difference for me. So I feel like that also brings me happiness. But because the days that I don't do it, I feel the difference. I feel
mm-hmm.
dragged down and I just feel like I'm all over the place, distracted and that kind of thing. So I feel like those are the most important things that I would list.
Mm-hmm. Good. It was really good conversation. I think we got like a lot of really good information out for people as well watching. So if you got something out of it there or you like anything specific, leave a comment and let us know about it. Or if you have more questions for Kimberly, reach out and or any questions for me. So thank you so much for watching it. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good conversation.
Thank you. I had a fun time.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, everyone.